What's the scariest experience you've had that only the paranormal can explain? Story 1. My grandmother had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's when I was a teenager. After my grandfather died, she just kept getting sicker. My parents decided to move her in with us so we could keep a closer eye on her. A couple of months later, she accidentally fell and broke her hip. My dad rushed her to the hospital and I stayed home with my mom. My grandmother used to sit in the same spot all day, a big comfy chair in the middle of the living room. At night, after my dad rushed my grandmother to the hospital, I walked through the living room and saw a shadow, a black silhouette of a large man standing behind the big chair. I jumped from fright, and as soon as I took my eyes off of it, it was gone. I thought it was just my imagination, so I brushed it off and ran back to my room. A couple of hours later, I was in my room and my mom was in the living room watching television when I suddenly heard her scream in pure terror. I ran to the living room. Her hand was on her chest and she was heaving. Her eyes were nearly bulging out. I asked her if she was okay, and she said that she could have sworn she saw my father standing behind that chair. Needless to say, my dad and my grandfather looked eerily alike. Story 2. Back when I just started working in a new town, my best friend was studying at university one town over. We met once a week in the cinema in her town for the sneak preview. One night after the film was over, we said our goodbyes and I hurried to my car to drive home. When I rolled off the parking lot, I was hit by the thought that it would be nice to take the country road home instead of the highway. I shook my head, wondering where that thought came from, because taking that way would at least double the time I needed to go home, and I had to go to work early the next morning. So I headed towards the highway anyway. I had never been scared of driving before or after that night, but I was almost shaking with fright when I rolled onto the highway. The road was quite empty, but eventually I closed up to a truck. On any normal day, I would just overtake it, but I could not bring myself to do so. Somehow that truck meant safety to me. Thoughts crossed my mind about what the last thoughts of people getting hit by drivers going the wrong way are. Again, I had no idea where they came from. Right before I reached my exit, a driver going the wrong way passed us by. As of today, I have not found a logical reason for my fear that night. I did not listen to the radio. I had a compact disc playing. There was no music or radio in the cinema as well, and it was well before the time of smartphones. Something or someone warned me. Story 3. A few years ago, the day before my birthday, I had a really weird dream. I was in my mother's kitchen with my mother, only there were no walls and just a dark expanse all around. I walked up to her and asked how he died. She replied that he woke up dead. I woke up at that point around 4:30 in the morning according to my phone and wrote this down in my dream journal beside my bed, which I was keeping at the time in an attempt to spur lucid dreaming, though it was not successful as my first lucid dream occurred entirely by accident 2 months ago. A few hours later, maybe after 8, after the sun was up certainly, my brother called me crying to say that our uncle, whose name started with the letter S, was dead. Apparently my aunt, whose name also started with the letter S, woke up around 6 to wake him up for work as usual, only to find him with a blue face and cold in the bed next to her, having choked on his vomit. This was a completely unexpected passing. He had no medical conditions that would have worried my aunt, his sisters, or his mother, never mind the rest of the family. Even the autopsy came back inconclusive. They could not find any reason, medical, neurological, or chemical, as to why he suddenly became sick in his sleep and did not wake up from it. Though my aunt did say that the coroners estimated he had been dead 1 to 2 hours by the time she got up, right around the time I woke up from the woke up dead dream. Story 4. When I was younger, my parents got me a bunk bed so I could have friends come over and spend the night. Try to be the cool kid in elementary school who invited all his friends over. Well, it was a trick eventually, soon after my uncle moved in with us, and he crashed on the bottom bunk while I slept on the top. My uncle also happened to be bartending at the time, so he often came home really late, like 2 in the morning, for example. Sometimes a bit intoxicated, sometimes not. Well, one night after he comes home and wakes me up from all the noise he makes, I tell him good night, then roll over and try to fall back asleep. After falling back asleep, maybe 30 minutes later, I feel the most unbelievable strong grasp on my arm. Imagine a full-grown man taking his hand and wrapping it around your entire forearm. That is what it felt like for maybe a good 2 seconds, then gone. Of course, it woke me up freaking out. I looked down thinking it was my uncle messing with me. He was passed out on his stomach. To this day, I do not know what caused it. I know for a fact it woke me up, so it could have been some weird dream where the feelings transferred over into the real world a little bit. Story 5. My dad used to work at the local library. Oftentimes, he would stay until late working when no one was there but him. One day he told me he would hear loud crashes upstairs after close, when only he was there. But when he would go, look to see what had fallen, there was not anything out of place. He told me about this, and we decided to go take pictures and ask questions while using a digital audio recorder. The following happened on 2 separate occasions. One night, while using the recorder, we asked the standard slew of questions and eventually headed home and listened back to the recording. At some point in the recording, a whisper could be heard saying that 1 and 1 is 2. I never knew what that meant, but it was just the two of us there, so I always assumed that is what the voice was referring to. On another night, we were sitting on the main floor in some chairs using the recorder and asking questions. One of the questions I asked was if it liked books. Right after I finished asking the question, we heard an unusually large crash behind us. We were pretty unnerved and decided to just leave. This was a Saturday night, the library was closed on Sunday, so we went back to the library the next morning to see what had made the noise. A couple of rows of books behind where we had been sitting there was a book on the floor laying open and face down. I picked the book up and the first word on the page it was open to was our last name. The book also had the word murder in the title. We were sufficiently freaked out. My dad and I have always been interested in the paranormal. He has some good stories as well. The library he worked at used to be a train station. I had always assumed that the strange things that happened may have been related to that. Story 6. For several years I experienced what is commonly called sleep paralysis. The first experience was one of the most terrifying. I was taking a nap on Christmas Day. I had the common experience of a visceral buzzing in my ear and head, and a feeling of terrible fear coming upon me. I awoke, but could not open my eyes or move a muscle. I then felt someone grab onto my feet and start crawling up my body. I felt completely overwhelmed with dread. Finally, I pushed it all back and opened my eyes and found myself alone. Similar experiences happened for years. Each was terrifying, but almost became commonplace. I discovered that it was sleep paralysis, and someone said the best way to deal with it was to give in to it and not to fight it. One day I was taking a nap on my bed in the basement. My brother was a couple rooms down in our entertainment room. I felt that familiar visceral buzzing. My eyes opened, but I could not move. I decided to let go this time, and I gave in to it. As soon as I had done that, my body started to sit up. I saw my arm rising, and one thought dominated my mind. I had to harm my brother. I was halfway up and panic set in, and I pushed back as hard as I could, and eventually woke up panting and terrified. I never gave in to it again. It has lessened over the past few years, but every year or so it will come back. Story 7. I grew up in a haunted house, so eerie things happened all the time, and the absolute scariest thing that ever happened, unfortunately happened about once a week. If you were sitting in our living room, you could see straight down our hallway to my bedroom door. It was pretty dark at the end of the hall, but you could usually make out my doorway and the doors on either side, and the pictures and things hanging on the wall. When the dark came, however, it was like someone dropped a black curtain over the end of the hall. You could still see about halfway down the hall, but beyond that, you might as well be looking into a black hole. When the dark came, it was always accompanied by this intense, uncomfortable feeling of being watched. Our family's 3 dogs would stare down the hallway and growl, and occasionally one of them would get brave enough to walk a little way down the hall, but they always came backing slowly out like they were afraid to turn their back on the dark. After a little while, usually a few minutes to half an hour, the darkness would suddenly disappear and you could see again. Sometimes, however, it would linger all night. And since nobody wanted to walk through the dark to get to the bedrooms, my whole family would be stuck in the living room all night. Story 8. When I was pregnant with my second son, I had a very vivid dream. My first son had died in his room. In my dream, I walked into his room and picked him up. I could feel how cold and heavy he was in my arms. I was screaming and screaming, trying to get help. But every time I ran through his bedroom door, I would end up back in his room. I knew I was dreaming but could not wake up. I suddenly heard someone very clearly say that he is fine. Wake up. And I opened my eyes to see an elderly man standing in my bedroom doorway. He nodded and walked away. I immediately jumped out of bed, still sobbing, and ran through my house, turning on lights looking for this man. At first I thought it was my uncle who lived upstairs, but my door was still locked. I realized that I did recognize the man. He was always in my dreams as a child, never spoke, just stood there, always in the background, and I never thought anything about it until that moment. I checked on my son and brought him back to my bed to sleep. A few days later, I was helping my mom go through some old photos she had been given from her family. She was raised by her aunt, and her family had been super secretive and possessive of photos and such. We were looking at a picture of a large family sitting around a long table. I recognized my mother's biological mom, my great aunt, great nana, and then there he was, the man from my dreams and who woke me up, sitting there next to my great nana, same look, same flannel shirt, pens in his pocket and balding head. I pointed him out to my mom. It was her grandfather who passed away when she was a young girl. She was his favorite, and he was not afraid to show it. I explained what had been happening all my life. He was always in the background of my dreams and never said a word until I had my night terror. There was no way I ever saw a photo of him, and I had never met him in my life. I have so many paranormal stories, I should really write about them. Tomorrow I am going to cleanse my aunt's house because her son heard laughing at night and his room is freezing cold all the time. I knew from the very moment I stepped foot in the house that something was off with that end of the house. Story 9. When I was around 3 or 4, my grandmother passed away, and soon after, all of my extended family flew into town to have the funeral. A week after the funeral, some relatives were still in town, including my uncle and his family. My grandmother wanted us to sell the house after she passed, so my family did exactly that. It was hectic because we were trying to pack everything up while everyone still had to go to work and school. On one of the days that we had to pack up the house, my parents both had work, my older cousins had school, and my uncles and aunts had jobs or other things to do. However, my uncle, my grandmother's oldest son, was available to watch me for a couple of hours, so he did. According to him, I asked him to go to the bathroom while he was watching television. The closest bathroom was in my grandparents' old room, so I went there. When I came back, I asked my uncle who the nice lady was on the bed. He kind of played along with it because he might have thought it was an imaginary friend or something. He asked me questions about her to entertain me. I described her as dark-haired, kind of pale, and wearing a blue nightgown. When I said that, my uncle freaked out because my grandmother always wore a light blue nightgown to sleep. After that, my uncle and I left the house and waited outside for my parents to come back home. Story 10. I was staying the night at a friend's house when I was about 13. We were watching The Shining with her older sister and another friend when I saw a black figure in my peripheral vision. I turned my head all the way to the right and watched this solid black figure in the shape of a man wearing a cowboy hat walk from one side of the house to the other. I did not say anything to my friend when it happened. I thought maybe my mind was just playing tricks on me because the movie was scary. After the movie, my friend's sister and others all left the house to stay elsewhere. My friend's parents were out of town. In the middle of the night, I woke up to someone stomping up the stairs toward the room we were sleeping in. We thought maybe her sister had just come home and ran upstairs to bed. We went to check and found no one. We heard the stomping a few more times and then a really loud bang on the wall between our bedroom and the outside of the house, on the second story. My friend looks me straight in the eyes and says that she asked if I saw the man earlier. I swear no one else was home, and my friend was just as terrified as I was. We hid under the blankets and did not come out until we could see sunlight. This is not my only encounter with unexplained or paranormal things happening. My dad's house when I was a kid was scary to say the least, haunted if you believe in that kind of thing. We used to see a man in a military uniform in the long hallway leading towards my brother's room. The security alarms would go off for no reason, like someone was opening and closing a door over and over again. And one time we had a decorative plate fly off a shelf and hit a mirror clear across the room. Story 11. When I was about 13 years old, we lived in a really old house that was on a farm. One time, my parents were out really late, and me and my brother were the only ones home. I was sitting in living room number one, and my brother went to go get a drink of water or something. My kitchen was next to another sort of living room number two, and it had a sort of bar on the side with a big window cut into the wall, so you could see into the kitchen from living room number two. All these rooms are very small, so when my brother left living room number one, I saw him stop dead in his tracks in living room number two, facing the bar looking into the kitchen. He walked back in and I asked what happened. He said he saw a black figure with glowing red eyes. Me and my brother used to love ghost hunting and stuff like that, but I can tell when he is seriously scared. So a few weeks later, my brother had a friend over, and he left the room to go grab his bag in living room number one. He came running back into the room and said that he saw a black shadow in the kitchen with red eyes. I immediately suspected my brother was trying to mess with me, so I looked at him and said to stop and laughed it off. But my brother's friend asked what I was talking about, and my brother swore on our dead dog. That was something we did not mess with, that he never told anyone except me. That house had a lot of creepy feelings to it and negative energies. We had about 7 pets pass away in that house. Never looked back when we left. Story 12, I was at a visitation a few years ago. I was in line at the casket. It was very crowded and the line was long. All of a sudden, I felt the hairs on my arms stand on end and I got goosebumps. When I looked up, there was this woman sitting on a bench across the room from me. She was staring at me and had a very stern look on her face. Her brown hair looked like she had slept on it and had not brushed it. She was very pale. I stared back at her for about 45 seconds to a minute. She never blinked. People kept walking in front of her, but once they moved, I could see that she was not taking her eyes off of me. It made me feel extremely uneasy. I remember my heart rate picking up. At some point, someone near me in line turned to talk to me. I took my eyes off her to respond. It was a very short conversation, no more than 30 seconds. When I looked back where she was sitting, she was gone. The uneasy feeling stayed with me until I left the funeral home. I scanned the area looking for her. I never saw her again. I do not know if this was paranormal, but it freaked me out. Story 13. I usually get home from work and leave the door unlocked for my roommate, who usually arrives at around the same time. Well, one day, I apparently had locked the door without thinking about it, which turned out to be a lifesaver. Our front door did not have any windows or a peephole, so you cannot see who is there. I was in my bedroom when I heard the doorbell ring. I thought it was my roommate who could not get in because I always left the door unlocked. As I am walking to open the door, I get this overwhelming feeling with chills that I should not open or unlock the door. It stopped me dead in my tracks. So as I am standing on the other side of the doorbell starts just constantly ringing, and I can hear a guy singing and whistling on the other side. He starts knocking and finally tries turning the doorknob over and over. Now, on any given day, the door is usually unlocked, but that day, for some reason, I had locked it. As he is trying to open the door, I hear him yell that he knows I am in there and that he can see my car in the driveway. He stands there for 5 or so minutes and leaves. Do not worry, I had called the police, and apparently he had been running around my neighborhood, doing this to random houses. But who knows what would have happened if I had not had that feeling of locking the door and then not opening it. Story 14. I do not know what to think about it, but here it goes. Around 8 years ago, I was on vacation with my parents and my cousin. My sister could not come as she had just started her first job, so she stayed home by herself. When we were children, both my sister and I used to be really close, mainly because we shared a room for my first 7 to 9 years. We used to have our code with taps for asking things like if I was already asleep or if our parents were asleep. Stuff like that. She is also always doing something or looking for something to do, always being the first up. So when she was up and wanted me to wake up, she would place her face as close to mine as possible and stare at me. I do not know for how long she would stay like this, but I can clearly remember multiple times waking to her doing this. I, of course, would shout or at least panic until realizing it was her. I guess it was fun for her, and I have to admit I also did it a couple of times. So now we are on our trip. It has been at least 10 to 12 years since the last time my sister pulled this prank on me. My sister and I are not as close as we used to be. We have certainly grown a little apart, but we still love each other. It was the last night in our trip before heading back to our city, and we had just found this nice hotel close to the pyramids in Palenque, which meant no cell phone service. We were sharing a room, my mom and dad in the first bed, and my cousin and I in the other one. At some point around 4 in the morning, I woke up to the same old sensation that someone is staring at me. So I opened my eyes and I could clearly see a face. My immediate reaction was to shout, waking my mother up. I have to say that this sensation by itself is really scary, but years of experience with my sister waking me up like this took the threat away. So despite my shouting, I was not scared. It was just too familiar. My mom turned on the light and asked me what happened. I told her that I was pretty sure my sister had just woken me up. I know it did not make any sense, but I felt it was her, though I cannot say I saw her face. I just saw a face and then it disappeared immediately. My mom is really superstitious, so she could not sleep after that because she felt something was odd and I could not sleep thinking of my sister. Later that day, in the morning, we noticed we all had lots of missed calls. My sister was involved in a really bad car accident. Luckily, she only had minor injuries. To this day, I do not know what to make out of this experience. My brain tells me it was just a coincidence. On the other hand, it is the only way I would have thought of my sister sleeping. It was just so real, so between both of us. As an extra on our previous visit to Palenque, my parents, my sister, and I, at the ruins, we could hear some drums. My parents said that it was raining, and we were playing with the pawns, and at some point the drums started playing. Our curiosity made us follow the sound, getting us deeper and deeper in the jungle. I cannot remember why we stopped, but when we finally made it to the exit and asked the security guy about the music, he said that so you heard the drums as well. He then proceeded to tell us that a lot of people had heard them at different times and they did not know the source of it. Story 15, I have had a few, some which I have posted before. Here is one I do not think I have. I can elaborate if more information is needed though. Sorry it is long. I went on holiday to Wales in 2012 with 7 friends. 5 of my friends went to this club that was really expensive to get in, and being a poor student, me and 2 others decided to go on the beach. Our apartments faced the beach, and we had steps going down to our apartment, but you could also get to it from the back by walking down an alleyway with a sensor light that lit up when you walked down it. We get to this alley, and I start freaking out and feeling scared to the point of almost crying. We walk down the alley onto the beach. No one seems to be around. We walk down the beach seeing no one, and I still feel a bit freaked out. I look up after walking for a few seconds and see this black, opaque figure in the alley we had just walked down with its arms stuck out to its sides. I am freaked out, but try to keep my cool. It looks as though it is about 7 feet tall, and we are away from it, so it would be taller close up. I go saying, "What is that?" and run along to the beach to the left and into the dock where there are street lamps because I am that terrified. My friends follow, and my skeptical friend asks what I am doing, thinking I am being mad. Before I can speak, my other friend says, "Did you not see that black figure?" Skeptical friend, who started running a couple of seconds after me and looked up at the alley, says he did not see anything in the alley after we told him what we saw, and tries to come up with answers such as, was it an ill person, which is why they look so weird. Obviously, we do not know, but my other friend and I both saw it and were freaked out. It was freakishly tall, seemed sinister, and had a black, opaque look to it. We saw no one and heard no one when walking down the alley. I go back to my apartment. 8 of us were sharing 2 apartments, and make them wait until 2 in the morning until the others come back. For the next couple of days, I feel freaked out sleeping in the room I share with another friend and feel like something is watching me from the corner, although that could be because I was freaked out from this experience. 2 days later, we are on the beach and I need the bathroom. I am very shy, so take all 3 keys to our apartment and check no one needs to go in, saying I will be 5 minutes. I go in with the keys in a pocket and go to the bathroom. I had been playing a trick on a friend as the toilet light switch was in the hallway outside the bathroom and had been turning it off when she was in there. I was immature. I was on the toilet and suddenly all the lights went off, both in the bathroom and in the hall. I could see through the crack under the door that the hall light was off. I heard laughter and footsteps and assumed I had left a key and my friends were playing a prank on me. I still felt afraid, and my phone went off, and I saw I had texts from my friends begging me to let them in. I washed my hands and opened the door, terrified but still convinced that it was a prank. I went into the hallway and all the lights were off. I went into the living room where the main door was and saw all of my friends there outside waiting for me looking puzzled. And when I asked later, they said they felt that they should come back. I checked my pockets and I had all three keys. And when asking, the neighbors found out they had not had a power cut. The light switch next to the bathroom had also been switched down. So it seemed as though this entity had been watching me play this prank on my friend and had copied it. I saw the black figure again down a different alleyway near some caves on the beach. We went on a ghost walk and were told about a mare that was hanged in the area. Me and the friend who had seen the figure just stared at each other at this point, and the ghost walk leader said that, "Have you seen it?" Although that could have been her trying to make the ghost walk scarier, and this figure did not really look hanged, if that makes sense. We got back from the ghost walk to find that our friends had started a food fight between apartments. They ran onto the beach, but some went round the front and some went round the back and down the alleyway where I first saw this figure. I ran behind them, but had not put my shoes on, so was behind them. It was gravelly, and saw the figure ahead of me. But it was not in the alleyway I had first seen it in, or the second one. It is hard to describe. Perhaps I can find pictures of the surroundings. And it was at a different angle and was on the side road ahead, instead of down the first alleyway, which would have been to the right. I stopped and ran back to the apartment. The next day I made our friend drive some of us down these roads where these alleys and side roads were, and there were no statues or anything that looked like this figure. On the last day of the holiday, we went into the other apartment our friends were in, which was not where I had had my occurrences, such as with the lights going off, but it was next to the alley where I first saw this figure, and the kettle was unplugged for a phone charger to go in and was taken off the kettle stand that kettles used to boil on. I cannot think of the name. It boiled by itself, whilst not plugged in or on the stand. Story 16, I have two stories. One scary, one not so much. When I was young, 6 to 7 years old, we moved into our first house. I had a very visceral nightmare about a man chasing me out of my home with a handheld sickle. At first he resembled my father, and when I got out of the house, I turned around and his face was different. Skin pale as Michael Myers' mask from Halloween. Eventually I woke up and eventually forgot the dream. Fast forward to about 9 to 10 years old. I was home alone for summer break, and around 10 in the morning, I felt a strong urge to get out of the house. At first I thought there was an intruder, but no evidence to support or even suspect someone had broken in. The best way to describe it was that my fight or flight was triggered and my brain was screaming run. I ran out the back door and to my back door neighbors, who had kids around my age, but had a babysitter. The babysitter let me hang out until my dad came home, but I watched my house from afar looking for any signs of activity, such as people in the windows. When my dad came home, I returned home, and I never told my dad out of embarrassment for being so afraid of nothing. Eventually, we moved to a new home when I was 13. The house dated back long ago, like pictures of the house surrounded by empty plots old. We had an old stair closet that never stayed closed. No matter how many times we closed it, next morning it would be open. No matter what. I never felt alone in the house. When I was asleep, I felt like I was being watched. One day I come downstairs and start making a sandwich unbeknownst to my parents. My father makes a comment asking if I was stomping up there. I make a comment that I was in the kitchen. My father and mother become spooked and grab a bat and a knife. They proceed to check every room of the house for an intruder, but we never found one. These problems remained chronic so much that we just got used to it and jokingly dubbed the ghost Jim. Anytime we heard a weird noise, we told Jim to knock it off or told Jim we were not in the mood. Of course, the noises never stopped. It was more a coping mechanism than anything. Story 17. When I was 18 and 8 months pregnant with our first child, I woke up in the middle of the night, completely frozen, with something telling me to move my head to the right, which was the direction my husband was laying, as well as having the crib for our soon-to-be little one, being on that side as well. There was a woman standing at the end of the bed, right between the crib and our bed. She put her finger up to her mouth, shushing me, and then touched my husband's face and hair, and gazed at the crib. She then proceeded to sit on my bed and cry while staring at the crib. I was frozen the entire time, and then she just left, like went out the door and left. Too scared to talk, I curled up to my husband and cried myself back to sleep. The next day, I tell him what I experienced the night before, and while describing the woman, he starts to tear up, and I ask what is wrong. He goes and pulls out his family album. Come to find out, he has an aunt who is rarely discussed. She was harmed by her husband when my husband was 9 years old. He was also her favorite while she was alive. Before him and I got together, he always said he never wanted to get married or have kids. My guess is that she just wanted to check the situation out and was overcome with emotion about the growing he had done in his 24 years of life. I have seen her a few times since, mainly around the times when we are about to have a huge life shift, buying a house, having our second, and so on. And our interactions have a totally different vibe now. She is not threatening or intimidating anymore. I will see her, she will nod, I will nod, and then she will keep observing things. Our oldest, 3 years old, always talks about the lady that looks like Papa, and our youngest, 10 months old, who is her namesake, is constantly playing with something that is not there. Overall, it has been a cool experience. Story 18, I was around 9 or 10 at the time this story happened. My best friend and I had been riding our bikes just being kids and messing around. We lived in one of those older towns that are filled with older homes and kind of compacted, so the roads turned to dirt and fields pretty quick. We were maybe 5 or 6 blocks from my house when we found a new road to explore, and we followed it down. We passed a church, took an L-turn, and were basically out of town and in the country in a few feet. We could see an old bridge a ways down, so we took off to check it out. The ride from the turn to the bridge was a little less than a half of a mile. As we get closer and closer to the bridge, I start to notice something is wrong with it. It is an old metal and concrete bridge. The metal is painted red, but it is peeling pretty badly, and the whole thing is leaning heavily to the left. There are two big piles of rock blocking each side of the bridge, and we stop our bikes at the first one. It is really quiet, and I immediately want to leave this place. Hated being there from the start. My friend calls me a chicken and gets off her bike and climbs the first rock pile. I refuse to leave my bike, even when she spots an armadillo and chases it barking. As she hits the rock pile on the other side of this bridge, it is like she suddenly senses what I do. She slowly turns and she is pale as anything, saying we need to leave. I do not argue, just wait for her to get back because I am not leaving her, and we take off. The whole ride to the bridge was easy. Our wheels glided like they were on the pavement, not gravel. The ride back, though, is like trying to pedal through thick mud. We are both standing up to pedal harder, and it feels like we are just creeping along. We stop about 100 feet away to catch our breath and look back, and there is this huge light, like a mini sun hanging above the bridge. I am freaking out, and I look at my friend in a, "Do you see this way?" And she looks back terrified and whimpers, "Go, go, go." Neither of us waits. We jump back on the pedals and pedal for all we are worth. We make it almost back to the turn, and this section of the road is lined with trees for a good bit, and I can see something black flashing between the trees right behind us. We hear a vehicle and think adults, so we are safe, at least safe enough to stop for air. We stop and see this truck pulling down a drive and onto the road. About a second later, we forget about the truck. There is now a red rectangle of light, like a tail light gliding about 7 feet off the road, left to right between trees on either side of the road. We are both watching this as the truck pulls up in front of it and stops, and I thought maybe the people in the truck saw it too. They probably did not, because after waiting a good minute for us to move out of the road, they honked at us. That honk was all we needed to get ourselves back to pedaling home. We never really went exploring too much after that and spent the rest of the day in the house. I was telling the story later on in my late teens and early 20s, and one of the people in the group was familiar with the road. They had lived on the road not far from the bridge, and strange things would happen in their house. They explained to me that the bridge leads to a man who was heavily intoxicated. One night this guy was headed home completely sloshed and missed the bridge, hitting the edge and going into the overfull creek below. They search for a few weeks and eventually recover his truck, but he is never found. It is one of the creepiest things that has happened to me. Story 19. When I was younger, I was made to stay at a friend's house for the night. Made you think? It was a giant manor that was built around the 1800s. Even walking around during the day was creepy as the parents could not afford the upkeep, and so it was falling apart. So I am in his room and need to go to the bathroom. And the only bathroom was down a long hall, with the only light being the toilet light at the end of the hall. It was frightening. So I peek out the door and try and build up the courage to walk it. It is so long and scary. So I run fast and get there. Sweet relief. But the whole time I get this chill, it really feels like someone is watching me as the door is still open behind me. I finish up, and as I turn to walk or run back up, and I will never forget this image, I see what I think is a head peering out from my friend's room, only the top half, and it is staring at me. I see old wiry gray hair. It was definitely an old man. I stand there for a second, and as soon as I blink, it is gone. And then I hear a loud creak as if whatever I saw was moving back into the room. I spent 3 hours in the bathroom, door closed, with the plan to run back to his room when it was bright. Most definitely my imagination, but my heart was pounding. There is no other response I have ever felt mentally than when I saw that head. I told my friend, and he just states it was probably his late grandfather. He has seen him sometimes in his room. Story 20. I have only had one experience, but it was a doozy. I was 16 or 17 at the time and worked at a restaurant that stayed open until around 2 in the morning. It had a bar too, so I got home pretty late. Sometimes I got groceries after, like I did this particular night, and got home even later. Add my 30-minute commute home to where we lived in the countryside, and I am finally back around 4 in the morning. We lived by a lake in a pretty wooded area and had a big porch out front. I did not use the bathroom at the store or on the way home, so I had to go. So not having neighbors and being a guy, I found a tree. I grabbed my groceries and took them inside. It took forever because of where I had to park. I hated making 2 trips, but I could not carry my case of soda, so I went back for that. So I step out onto the porch, and what had been a hot, windy morning in Florida turned suddenly totally still and quiet. I paused, not sure what was off, just that something was wrong. I saw light in the front yard, like a car coming down the road with those fancy white lights. But the shadows on the trees were all wrong. The light was coming from above, not at the side. I became aware of a low hum, like an off-balance dryer far away. The light got brighter and brighter, and still no wind or movement. It was like that for what felt like forever, but maybe like 45 seconds. Then as suddenly as it was there, the shadows faded. But they never went left or right, so whatever left went up. I could not look up because of the porch awning, but I was so frozen in place, I do not know if I would have. I left the soda and bolted inside. Never could rationalize that one. Story 21. This happened one summer in Mexico in a small rancher village. I saw a girl get possessed once. She fainted and I caught her. We put her to bed and she started acting weird. She was crying and did not want to open her eyes because she would see little demons or something. Her dad was harmed when she was young, and she kept insisting he wanted her to go with him and said she could see him giving her his hand. 4 grown men struggled to keep her from raising her hand to grab her dad's. This went on for a few days with people constantly by her side. The part that really shocked me was that she started speaking English. She was adamant that her crush was going to come from work and that she had to take good care of their baby. She did not have kids. I forgot how she calmed down, but she ended up leaving to her mother's house in the city, where she got better to the point where they felt she was okay to go home to her grandmother's house. As soon as she goes in the room she was in, she burst out running and just kept going and going and going. She left for good, ended up coming to the United States with family, and never really looked back. To this day, I do not know if she just had a mental breakdown or what. But mental breakdowns do not teach you languages you do not speak or make you way stronger than you should be. Story 22. 4 years ago, I moved into my first apartment. It was a small studio with no bedroom door. It was the first time I had ever lived on my own, and I brought my 2 cats with me. I had a long mirror hanging on my closet door. Many nights I felt like something dark was in the mirror and was watching me. I kept telling myself that it was in my mind, and this was the first time living on my own, and I was just trying to get used to things. The sight and feeling happened most nights. One day I was sitting on my couch and heard a rustling noise and looked over at my trash can. It was a swing lid, and I watched it swing to the right, then to the left, and then it stopped. I walked over to inspect. No vent air was hitting it, both cats were in the bedroom, and there was not any trash inside. I thought it was strange, but pushed it out of my mind. A couple months later, a friend and her 3-year-old daughter came over, and we hung out on my patio. Her daughter kept going in and out of my apartment, shutting the sliding glass door behind her each time. After a while, she ran to the glass door in a panic and opened it, jumped out and slammed it shut, then threw a rock at the glass door. We asked her what was wrong and what scared her. We asked her if the cats scared her or a spider. She simply replied, "Ghost." I was stunned. I had not told anyone what was going on before this. After a while, things started to happen more and more. My cats would fight on my bed, or be doing something on my bed, and then would all of a sudden stop and look at the top left corner of my bedroom simultaneously. It would always be the left corner. I always checked to see if it was a bug or dust or anything else, and it was not. They would be facing the opposite direction and then both turn and look at that corner. One day I went into my bedroom to get a winter headband from my closet. I looked at my bed before walking into the closet and for some reason made a mental note that my bed was made and nothing but 2 pillows were on it. I am normally a messy person. I walked in my closet knowing the headband was there because I saw it the day before. I could not find it and said, "Forget it, I will just wear the hat I found." I turned and walked out of the closet, and draping off the side of the bed right in front of the closet door was my headband. As time went on, I became more and more freaked out, so I started sleeping with the bathroom light on. I woke up one night and felt 2 very light footprints at the end of my bed. I looked around and saw one cat fast asleep in the cat tree in the corner and the other fast asleep next to my pillow. Out of the corner of my eye, I see the corner of my comforter flip up. Then all of a sudden, it felt like a large hand grabbed the right side of my face, and I felt like I was spinning and felt sick and kept trying to force my eyes open, but I could not. It had to have been for 15 seconds, but it felt longer. Finally, I was able to open my eyes and the spinning and ill feeling stopped. Shortly after, I felt 2 light footprints at the end of my bed again. Things would happen, and then nothing for a couple of months. One night I woke up and saw my hairbrush and night cream slam onto the ground. At first I thought it was my older cat because she liked to knock things over to wake me up. I kept calling her name, and my younger cat walked in from the living room to inspect what was going on. I kept calling my older cat's name and peered into the living room and saw her, and she would not come into the room. She looked scared. To further explain why it would not be anything else, my bathroom countertop had a round curb that went upwards so something could not easily slide off. I had also closed the vent in my bathroom because it would blow hot air onto my hair products. After some time, I rented a bigger apartment in that complex. I went to the first one to clean the bathroom and was there by myself. A figure walked past the door. After moving into my second apartment, the realization that I was being followed by the spirit came to light. It knocked on my door, and without realizing it, I let it in. Thus, more things have happened, and now living in a townhouse, it still appears every so often. Story 23. In my late teens, I had nightmares quite frequently. That may not be the most accurate term, but it fits to me. They were semi-lucid dreams insofar as I knew I was not awake, but I could not control what was happening. The nightmares were always different experiences, but I had the same objective in each one: save as many people as I could from what was happening. People around me would be dying from a fire, or being hurt, or a wild animal would be harming them, and I would have to sacrifice myself to try and save them. The thing was, there was always this thing in my dreams with me. Once it was a doctor with no face, another time it was a bear. I even remember it being the front door to a house once. Whatever it was, it always had the same foreign feeling. I do not think I created it in my mind. I honestly think it came in. It would always be in the wrong place at the wrong time and hinder my objective in the nightmare. This thing would ensure my nightmare took the worst turn possible. Then I would get sacrificed in some way and die. I would not wake up like you normally do when the bad thing gets you, though. It would continue until I experienced my own death, pain included. Then I would stand up as a ghost maybe. I still do not quite understand how or why, and just have an overwhelming need to scratch myself somewhere. I would claw at my leg or back or face, and the dream would end shortly after that. The next morning, I would wake up to scratch marks on my body where I scratched myself in the dream. It always freaked me out, but then the dreams went away. Then one night, I had a really bad one. I could not die, I could not scratch the itch, and I was getting afraid. My wife, girlfriend at the time, tried waking me up. She says I would not wake up, but I was crying. I vividly remember her waking me up and me being unable to move with a giant shadow looming over our bed. I do not think I will ever forget feeling that helpless. I told her about it the next morning and came clean about the scratches. She had asked about them before. After that night, though, I did not have the nightmares anymore. They just went away. Last year, I found out my wife had talked to the father at her church, who agreed to come to our apartment and bless the place. I guess he spent 45 minutes in the bedroom, and she said she had an uneasy feeling the whole time. I cannot say it was paranormal and not just my imagination and me scratching myself in my sleep. But the piece that just bugs me so much is him blessing our place without my knowledge and the nightmares going away after that. I am not exactly a religious man, but what was that? I am shaking now and need to stop writing. Story 24, I live with my parents and was home alone one day. I had just gotten off of work and was taking my standard post-work break. It was maybe 12 in the afternoon and neither of my parents got home from work until at least 3:30 to 4 in the afternoon. Since I was alone, I was sitting with the door open when I heard my laundry room door open. My laundry room door connects to the garage, so I figured one of my parents got home early and came in through the garage door. I closed the bathroom door slightly and yelled hello, but did not get a response. I yelled hello again, but no response. It was at this point that I realized I had not heard any footsteps come into the house yet. We have old wood floors that creak really loud whenever you walk on them, so it is always obvious when anybody's walking anywhere in the house. I finish and get up to see who is home. As I am standing up, I hear the laundry room door slam closed. I walk towards the laundry room and into the garage since I would catch whichever parent was home leaving the driveway. I open the laundry room door and the garage is shut and the light turned off. Our garage light stays on for 15 minutes after someone has opened the door before turning off. I was kind of freaked out now, so I lock the door and go into my room to watch videos. As I am loading up a video, I hear the door that connects to my patio from my parents' bathroom open then close twice. I grabbed a fork, the only weapon near me at the time, and crept around the corner to see who was there. Nothing. Nobody. I waited outside their bedroom door for about 15 minutes in hopes of catching a burglar sneaking out from the closet, but no results came up. I freaked out, ran into my room and watched my door, just listening for anything else spooky going on. Nothing else happened, and I still do not have a reasonable explanation for it to this day. Story 25. When I was younger, I used to be terrified of the guest room in my house. I hated being near it, or even looking at it while the door was open. Once my mom was in there folding laundry because the bed was the only place we had to stack clothes. I was in the room with her because she was making me help her. Well, she left the room for a minute or two to go get more clothes to fold, and as I was standing there, I suddenly felt like something was watching me, and then I heard a voice yell in my ear, "Get out." I do not remember what I did next, but as I grew older, I eventually grew out of the fear of this room. About a year ago, I decided that I wanted to move my bedroom to this room since I liked the paint a lot more, and there were holes in the wall of my old room. I am fully convinced that something does not want me in that room. I have heard voices call my name, the electricity suddenly go out, but only in that room, and numerous other things happen. The one that scares me the most, though, is the door. Sometimes at night when I am sleeping, the door will open itself. It started out as just creeping open slowly, slow enough that I thought I just had not closed the door all the way. But one night, it slammed open hard enough to break the door stopper and put a hole in my wall. Whatever is in my house does not want me in that room with the door shut, and I do not know why. I even got home one day and noticed that it looked like someone had used a crowbar to pull out part of the door frame, which now gets in the way when I am closing the door, making it harder to shut. I also have a few other experiences with a board that I do not feel like typing out right now, but I can later if anyone wants me to. I can also post pictures of the hole in the wall and the door frame if anyone wants. Story 26. My wife and I were living at my grandma's house. It is a very large house, and we had the entire upstairs. My wife and I were in the master bedroom, and our 3-month-old daughter was in a front bedroom across the hall from us. We had one of those new fancy baby monitors that has the breathing sensor and all that. Primarily, if our daughter tossed wrong, this thing went off. But we kept on with it as we were new parents. One night while trying to go to sleep, my wife and I were lying in bed talking about the week's happenings. Basically just talking, till we got tired enough to go to sleep. We finally stopped talking and were ready to sleep, so we turned up the baby monitor so it would be loud enough to wake us if the alarm sounded or if our daughter started crying for one reason or another. As I lay there trying to nod off, I heard what I thought was breathing over the monitor. Adult breathing. It was kind of distorted, like bad reception. So I would listen more carefully to be sure it was not malfunctioning. I heard my daughter moving around, and that came through clear, so I figured it was just some interference with the monitor. However, a few moments later, I heard clear as day over the monitor an older woman's voice saying, "Shh, it is okay," in a very soft and almost comforting tone. However, being a new father living where we did, I freaked out. Leaping out of bed thinking that someone was in my daughter's room about to take her or something, I ran through the hall and burst into her room. Her room was near pitch black, but for the little toy thing we had on her crib, it would give a constant soft glow. And if there was noise, be it a kick or crying, it would turn on and move and play soft music. That was on in the middle of its song. My daughter appeared sound asleep and no one was in the room. Figuring I must have dreamt the voice, I walked over to pick up my daughter to comfort her and myself at this point. When I picked her up, I noticed she was very, very warm. I checked her temperature and it was a dangerous 103 degrees. Now, before we put her to bed, she was fine. Only 3 hours had passed since then, which probably means her temperature would have continued rising throughout the night had something not made me go in there. My wife and I can only conclude to this day that the spirit of the old woman that we are pretty sure is in my grandma's house was the one who got me in there. My grandma's house is over 110 years old and holds a lot of history. So to this day, we are thankful to this spirit or happening or whatever you want to call it, and are quite certain that whatever it was, it saved our child's life. Story 27. My friends called me one night to go to a basketball game at the Civic Center. My buddy Crazy Legs was driving, and he and I had a rule between all of our friends that I always rode shotgun in his vehicle, and he always rode shotgun in mine. I went out to the car to get in, and something was just telling me not to go. It was like I physically could not get in the vehicle. My other friend had already got out of the front seat and got in the back with my other friend to give me my seat. They gave me hell, but I eventually did not go. Something just physically would not let me in the car. It was like I was frozen with fear or something. Well, anyways, on their way home from the game that night, they lost control of the vehicle because it was pouring the rain and slid sideways underneath an 18-wheeler trailer that was loaded down with flooring tile. All three of my friends were severely injured considering they were driving a Chevy Cavalier, and the 18-wheeler wheels literally drove over top of the vehicle. This all occurred around midnight. All three of my friends suffered serious, lifelong injuries. The one who was sitting where I should have been eventually committed self-harm due to his constant pain from being in his 20s and walking with a cane from his broken legs, neck, back, pelvis, jaw, you name it. I still wonder today if I would have died that night and why I did not get in the car because I had nothing better to do that night. No work the next day, and the tickets were free. Story 28. My favorite city to visit is Savannah, Georgia. So after I graduated college, my parents took me there for a long weekend to celebrate. My mother loves to watch those ghost hunter shows, and with Savannah being one of the most haunted cities, she was super excited. We stayed at the Marshall House, which is one of the oldest hotels in the city. It also happened to be a yellow fever hospital at one point in its long history. We ended up getting a suite with a bedroom separated via French doors to a living room with a fireplace and a pull-out couch where I slept. Night 1. I am getting my bed ready and Mother Dearest comes in and puts one of those flashlights that you see the ghost hunt people using all the time, because it is very easy to turn on and off, on the mantle of the fireplace facing me. I said, "Oh, hell no." She thought it was the funniest thing. Fast forward to morning and no flashlight, thank the Lord. But apparently Dad got up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom. And when he walked out of the bathroom, he had to close the boudoir door so he could make his way back to bed. He laid down, thought about it. Then it dawned on him he would not have been able to get in the bathroom if the door to the boudoir was open to begin with. Mother was so excited that we could actually be in a haunted room. Our last full day there, we had breakfast delivered to the room so we could eat on the balcony on the rocking chairs. I had finished my food, so I came back inside, sat on the couch, and started reading either brochures or a magazine or something. The ceilings were high, and there was a ceiling fan with 3 lights on it, but since we got there, only one of the bulbs worked, so we just supplemented with the table lamps. No big. I had not turned on the lamp yet when Dad walked inside. He told me to turn on the lamp so I can see better, and as I started reaching for the lamp, both of the other light bulbs in the ceiling fan turned on. At this point, Mother is upset because nothing has happened to her yet, and the flashlight has yet to turn on. So she is talking to whatever is in the room, trying to provoke it. Probably could have done without that. We go to bed that last night. The flashlight is still on the mantle. My parents shut the French doors. I put the flashlight in my purse because I was over it. Fell asleep, but woke up at some point in the night to what sounded like someone getting up from the chair in the room. Damn it. So the way the room was set up, the pull-out couch was on the same wall as the door that opened up to the hallway. The fireplace was to my left, and the chair was near the lower left corner of the bed. Then I hear what sounds like heavy boots slowly walk from the chair, around my bed, towards the door. Then I heard a clink on the side table in between the bed and the door. I was not about to open my eyes and see some Civil War soldier standing next to my bed, so my eyes were glued shut, and I just remember thinking that if anything touches me, I am out. What was probably 2 seconds but felt like 2 minutes passed before I heard the boots walk down the hallway away from our door. At this point, my heart is beating out of its chest, and all I could think was if that flashlight is on in my purse, so help me God. Waited a few minutes before I got enough courage to unfurl from the blankets, eyes closed still, and reach for the lamp. When I did open my eyes, nothing. And nothing on the side table. Did not sleep the rest of the night. Story 29. When I was 19 or so, I had a terrifying episode of sleep paralysis. I know it was probably a nightmare, but it felt supernatural given the circumstances. At the time it happened, I was dating a girl from a small farm town. She came from a very traditional family and her father was very conservative. He would always give me dirty looks and hardly said 2 words to me. I told my girlfriend about it, and she said it is because he disapproved of our relationship and that she was lucky her grandmother was not alive to witness us being together. This upset me, but I cannot blame the guy, but whatever. Later that night we went to bed together, and I had the strangest dream. The dream started normally enough, but suddenly everything switched to very grainy black and white, like an old film, and I was standing in a clearing of trees with a dirt path. A procession of people started walking down the path in black funeral clothes. After a few people went by, I noticed some men carrying a black coffin down the path. Once the coffin crossed my vision, everything paused and started shaking rapidly, and the coffin got darker and started to form a dark ball in the middle of my vision. This black void was shaking violently and steadily growing larger until it filled nearly my entire field of vision. While this was happening, I could hear rushing wind in my ears, which got louder and transitioned into a screaming woman's voice as the void got larger. At this moment, I jolted awake. The void was still there, and the wind was rushing fiercely, and I could not move my body. I tried to scream, but nothing came out. I laid there terrified, silently screaming for what felt like an eternity until the void slowly faded and I regained control of my body. When I was fully awake, my body was shaking and my heart was racing. I know it was probably just a nightmare, but a part of me wonders if it was the spirit of my girlfriend's grandmother come back to spite me. Make of this story what you will. My relationship with the girl did not last, although we still keep in touch.